Hey, can't believe it already. Week 3 of Armchair Quarterback. I'm David Allen, joined as always by Coach Guy Suttle. And sitting in today, the legend himself, Andy Foster. Each week we talk about high school sports in Cleveland County. We'll talk about a little ACC, SEC, Gardner-Webb University, football, and then we'll talk a little Carolina Panthers and the pros as we wrap things up for the week. But we had an interesting week this past week, had a county game and a couple of other matchups to go. And of course, we always go in alphabetical order, and as it happens, that was the county game. And of course, all 3 of our games this week disturbed by the electrical storm that came through Friday night. And guys, I hadn't seen a storm like that all summer. We hadn't had two nights of activity like we got all rolled in on Friday afternoon and Friday evening.
I'm telling you, it was something else when Crest got to the halftime, and I was like, I'm out. I'll see you. I'm going to listen to this one later because it was looking bad all the way around. And I couldn't believe that they came out and played, some 2 or 3 minutes in the second half.
3,000 lightning strikes, what I heard on the radio or on TV Friday night when I got home. All 3 games were in action Friday night, then postponed. Shelby finished up on Saturday. Burns, Crest, and Kings Mountain all finished up on Monday. And in case you normally tune us in on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever, we're taping a little bit later this week just because of that action. So let's start with Burns and Crest. This one was at least final score, good ball game, 32-27. But this was a game that Crest got ahead and then saw Burns come back. And Coach, both of you were there for this one, but Coach started us off 32-27 by all rights, good ball game.
It was a good ball game. I think that Crest is definitely going to be working on their defense this week, but it had some big plays both ways. I thought both teams made some adjustments from Friday to Monday, so there's going to be even more adjustments between now and this coming Friday.
Absolutely. Andy, my understanding is, I don't know, Burns threw a pass. They just decided they were going to, got that running quarterback, we're going to line up with a couple tight ends and just power football. And it didn't start out so great for the Bulldogs on Friday night, down, I think, 27-13 when the rains and the lightning came, but ended up making it a close ball game.
Yeah, it's a much different Burns team this year. The passing game is virtually gone. I think they might have passed twice in the ball game, but they do have a great running game. And Warlick, the quarterback, is very talented in running the offense they've gotten intact this season.
Coach, I think Burns maybe cut it to 20-13 right before the half, maybe a minute to go. And I was at the Shelby game, so I wasn't sure what had happened, but it was like I almost thought Crest had run the kickback because it was like almost immediately I get a text that said that Crest had gone up 27-13 and a couple of play drive there right with a minute to go in the first half. That was a big drive, obviously.
Yeah, the Crest was scoring in really quick in that first half. I mean, it was not taking them long. Burns actually took the opening kickoff and drove it down the field and burned up over 5 minutes, almost 6 minutes into the first quarter before Crest got the ball. And 2 plays later, Crest scores.
Well, obviously this was the first game of the season for Crest. They had not played in the open the first week. They had not played. Burns was coming off a win over Forest View. And Andy, we had said last week, this might be a situation for Crest where you might see the false starts, the offsides, those things that typically come with the first game of the season. And then when the game basically got split over 2 days, I don't know, was that kind of stuff even a factor for either one of the teams this week?
Not really. It happened a little bit with more frequency in the second half, but I thought, especially for Crest, playing their first game, they played pretty smooth.
Well, so there you go. 32-27, the final. Crest over Burns. Coach Lloyd wins in his return to Crest High School. I didn't get a chance to talk to him, but I guarantee you he was excited about that. Both of these teams now, after the county matchup on Friday night, both of them now move ahead to county matchups this coming Friday night, and we'll talk about that in our second segment. Let's move on to the Kings Mountain game. 14-7 at the Lightning Storm, Coach, and Cox Mill didn't want to come back and finish it, and they ended up getting hammered 42-17. But at least at that point, it was a close ball game.
Well, I mean, and coaches probably can feel this or sense this. Even though it was 14-7, Cox Mill may have been sitting there going, "Man, we're lucky to be this close." I mean, it could have been a lot worse in the first half. And you're talking about the Lightning Storm. That thing backed up. It was almost like it was Charlotte was getting hammered. Gastonia started hitting a little bit Kings Mountain and kind of stayed there. Then all of a sudden it just blew up and got everybody. But yeah, I think Cox Mill could read the writing on the wall. I almost said the lightning on the wall, but they could read the writing on the wall that this could get ugly, and we're lucky that we're 14-7.
Yeah, I think at one point they said Cox Mill had a 4th and 51, Andy. So that might have been the writing on the wall that they needed to know that it was not looking good. And of course, I think Kings Mountain at one point was up 30-7, ended up winning again handily, but a big win for Kings Mountain coming off the loss in the opener.
Yeah, they've got to be happy with the way they responded Friday night, and that gives a good indication that Kings Mountain's going to be tough this season.
Well, and you know, I was talking to Matt Bridges today about it at school, and just looking at the schedule. I mean, you know, when you've still got South Point and Crest on the schedule, every week is a big week in the Big South. So obviously this was a big win. It's a non-conference game. Now they've got the county game with Burns coming up on Friday night. Again, we'll talk about that in the second half of our show. But you know, that was a must-win for Kings Mountain after the Shelby loss.
Absolutely. I mean, and you mentioned it too. There's going to be someone in Gaston County that is going to rise to the top or close to South Point, other than South Point. South Point is a regular. They're going to be at the top of the heap every year. And then there's going to be another team, whether it's Hunter Huss, whether it's Ashbrook. I think that would be the two leading candidates right now, are going to come out of this and rise to the top also. That you in the Big South, you know you're going to have Crest, Kings Mountain, South Point. There's going to be a fourth team that's going to come in there.
Absolutely. Probably not going to be North Gaston. They got beat by Bessemer City. So we'll have to give Coach Wilson a hard time about that one. 42-17, the final. Kings Mountain, a big win over Cox Mill. That game at home for the Mounties, and now they will get a chance to play another home game this week with Burns, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Final game of the week, Shelby at home against AC Reynolds. Did not start well on Friday night, and certainly did not finish well on Saturday. We do have some highlights. Coach, this is one of those things where it was just, you know, there's the first series, balls on the ground. It was not a turnover. It led to a punt, but the Golden Lions just could not protect the football on Friday or Saturday. They finished on Saturday.
Yeah, it really wasn't a tale of two halves as much as it was just some play that we're not accustomed to out of the Golden Lions, and I'm sure Coach Will Banks will fix all those problems pretty quick. But as you can see here, AC Reynolds now is a good high school football team. They have a lot of speed, probably not as big as up front as we've seen in the past, but they overall team speed looked very good. And Ryan Hamrick, the quarterback, I thought did an excellent job of managing the football game. The only part I got to see was Saturday afternoon.
Andy, one of the things that we probably don't don't talk enough about during the course of a season is when a team has an outstanding kicker. And, you know, not to take anything away from Jose Lopez for Shelby, he had a good game too, but the Santania kid for AC Reynolds, he handled the punting duties, handled the extra point and the field goal duties, and he was in the end zone pretty much all day on the kickoffs. Yeah, I tell you what, that is a weapon and can be a weapon for a high school team when they have a quality kicker.
Oh, no doubt about it. That really can make it tough for the opposition when you've got a kicker that can do everything with a lot of success.
Absolutely. Andy, you've been around a long time. Of course, you know, Guy and I, we hadn't been around quite as long, but 51-21, that is not a score you see out beside Shelby High. I mean, that's just a very unusual situation on Friday/Saturday night.
Yeah, that was one that'll hit you right in the face when you see the final. And it was a shocker to me. And, you know, Shelby and AC have had some great games throughout the years. Usually a couple of 3 points was the difference.
No question about it. Shelby got it within 27-21 early third quarter after they started back on Saturday, kicked the extra point to get it to 27-14, then held, got the ball, scored, and were right there within 6. And then Gold Lions just nothing left on Saturday. So 51-21, you saw the graphic, the final there in that one. And of course, we got Shelby Crest coming up on Friday night. We'll talk about that, as well as the Burns Kings Mountain game. We'll do that when we come back. You're watching Armchair Quarterback.
The only prediction I'd make is I'd be pretty willing to bet I won't be doing it in 20 more years.
My question is, where's our residual checks?
144 have taken Republican ballots, and Wes and 2 others have taken Libertarian ballots.
Pravda, however, PBS, however.
Wes.
Wes.
Ladies
and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome back to Armchair Quarterback. I'm David Allen, joined as always by Coach Guy Suttle and also Andy Foster joining us this week. Each week we look ahead to what's coming up for our high school teams, and this week it is 2 just absolutely classic Cleveland County matchups. You got Burns at Kings Mountain, Andy, and this one you got both teams coming in at 1-1. Both teams in the situation where they would love not to drop that second game. So there's a lot of things, and then of course you throw in the Kings Mountain versus Burns factor of county rivals. It ought to be a good one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. Both teams are not happy with a 1-1 record, and they're going to be playing hard Friday night.
What do you expect to see out of Burns going into this game? Obviously, a lot of run game against Crest. Do you expect to see more of that, or do you expect to see them picking up the passing game a little bit?
I would think the passing game would be a little more of a factor for the Bulldogs, but they can run the football. Their front line really blocks well.
Obviously, Coach, you're not going to see anything from the Cox Mill game to be very helpful, but when you look at that Shelby film, the Golden Lions did have success moving the ball through the air against Kings Mountain. So if you're Coach David Devine and your passing game isn't exactly where it has been the last couple years, that's going to be a tough situation for him going into Friday night against Kings Mountain.
Yeah, I think that, and it's like Andy said, they moved the football against Crest. They won the line of scrimmage in several instances, especially in that second go-round on Saturday. That's got to be concerning for Kings Mountain because Burns spreads you out. You have to cover them. You have to put the people out there. It's not like you're going to be able to put 9 or 10 in the box to stop the run. And Burns did a great job of moving the football. I'm sure, and we see it on Sundays also, when they get that run game going, that opens up the passing game off the play action.
Absolutely. Kings Mountain, meanwhile, they're looking for that balanced attack. They had a good mix against Shelby. Weren't as successful running the ball, Andy, as they would like to be, but then were able to have some success against Cox Mills. So they've got to be feeling a little bit better about their balance on offense going into this game with Burns.
Yeah, I would think they would feel much better about how they're going to move the ball against the Bulldogs. Burns had some problems stopping Crest, and they may have the same problem with Kings Mountain Friday night.
Well, we'll see how that goes. So again, another big county matchup, and it's going to be a good one over at John Gamble Stadium on Friday night. Burns travels to Kings Mountain, and now we'll switch our attention to Shelby at Crest over at Sid Bryson Stadium on Friday night. Hopefully this Friday night. I know they're calling for rain, but I think they're not calling for it till later in the past midnight type of thing. Hopefully that's the case. We'd like to get both of these games in on Friday night without any more weather issue. But, Coach, obviously it goes without saying for Shelby, regardless of who they're playing, they got to take better care of the football. They were not careful with the football on Saturday or Friday part of the game, and they're going to have to do a better job taking care of the football on Friday night against Crest.
Yeah, they're going to have to do a better job of taking care of the football, and both of them are going to have to start playing defense, whether it's Crest or Shelby. Both need to play in on the defense, and I'm sure that's going to be a point of emphasis all week. But, in this game, you just never know. I can remember, and Andy, you can help me here, this in 2004, this was the third game of the season, and virtually Crest nor Shelby had given up any points. Crest goes over to Shelby, and it's a 36-34 ball game. And nobody else scored on each other the rest of the season like that. I mean, 04 was it was one of those great defensive teams for both Shelby and Crest, yet when they got together, it was who had the ball last won.
Well, and it's one of those things with rivalry games. You say you throw the record book out, you can whatever's been going, not necessarily going to be the case. And Andy, you've seen that over the years with these two. I mean, we've seen a little bit of everything in this Crest-Shelby matchup. What would you say are the keys for the Chargers on their side on Friday night to victory against Shelby?
Well, expect the unexpected, because there's going to be some wild plays that'll happen sometime during the ball game. But I think for Crest, the key's defense. They've got to have an improvement on defense. Shelby can score a lot of points, and the Crest defense really going to be tested Friday night.
No question about that. And you talking about the craziness. I mean, I go back to 85 when Coach Jim Taylor had his offense take a knee on 4th down at the 2-yard line, trailing or up by a point, and then Coach John Taylor, instead of just sending his guys out to line up on the ball, went and did the fuddle huddle thing, whatever you call that,
yeah.
and they never got the snap off because the clock ran out. We've seen pitch stolen in midair and return for a touchdown when the game seemed to be over. I mean, there's been all kinds of craziness that have happened in this series.
Yeah, that game, and I was on the other sideline. I was on the Shelby sideline when Robert Williams intercepted the pitch, and we were, Tucker Hamrick had kicked a field goal to tie the game, and we're all ready to go into overtime, and that play happens with, 15 seconds to go in the game. It's just never going to be a normal game where tendencies balance out. It's always, like Andy said, it's going to be a wrinkle somewhere. There's going to be something different every time they go out there. We were talking about the 04 game earlier. In 2015, which was the largest crowd I've ever seen at a high school football game at Shelby. And, there you go again. Both teams undefeated. Both teams ranked number 1 in the state in their classification, the last game of the season. And it ends up being a wild shootout. I think it was a 2-point or 3-point in the 30s game again.
Yeah, I called that one the perfect storm game. Both undefeated, both number 1, both defending state champions, and
that's right.
We had them out. We had them from every which way that night, packed in there. There's the matchups. 2 big county matchups this week for Week 3. Burns at Kings Mountain, Shelby at Crest. John Gamble and Sid Bryson Stadium's going to be the host. Get there early, because one of the things that's a new wrinkle to Cleveland County this year is the security checks. You got to go through the security checks, leave your bag. I'm just telling you, leave your bags at home. If you don't have a clear bag, just leave your bag in the car or whatever, but it'll help you getting in the game. But those two are going to be big on Friday night. $10 admission to both of them, so get your tickets online or in person early, and hopefully it's going to be great weather. This weather today is unbelievable. Hopefully the rest of the week is going to be that way. Let's talk about college football just a little bit. We'll start with Gardner-Webb. Gardner-Webb coming off the tough loss to Wofford on Thursday night. The Bulldog, Wofford basically talking about fuddle huddle. Wofford goes for the 2-point conversion the first time they touch the ball, and that's the difference in the ball game, that 1 point. But Gardner-Webb's got James Madison this week, and that's going to be a little tougher test.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot tougher test. James Madison's going to it's just going to be a tough week for Gardner-Webb, and that's going to be defensively and offensively. It's going to be hard to score, and it's going to be hard to keep them down.
Andy, obviously new coach, a lot of new players. I heard on the radio Saturday that Coach Trey Lamb had 24 former Bulldogs with him at ETSU as he was playing Appalachian on Saturday. So a lot of new faces on that Gardner-Webb sideline, both as coaches and players. And then all of a sudden you're getting a buzzsaw like James Madison in week 2.
Yeah, that's a tough scheduled game for the Bulldogs this week in this James Madison school. Tremendous tradition, and it would take a huge upset for the Bulldogs to prevail.
Absolutely, so we'll keep an eye on that. ACC football, my goodness gracious. Somebody said, Mac Brown said the Big Ten went 17-1. The only one was the win for Carolina on Thursday night, but they lost their starting quarterback in the mix. And I don't know, Florida State might have lost their starting quarterback too. They're 0-2. He might have gone to the bench after the loss to Boston College last night, Coach.
Yeah, after that loss, though, the coach may be
might be going with him.
Might be going with him to
right.
the bench. So that was a shock. I mean, I understand you went to Ireland and overseas and whatever the excuses that you might have there, and it being the first game of the season, but to have Boston College to come into your home, come to Tallahassee, and you get beat. I mean, that's a tough go. That's a really tough go. In the ACC right now, and you may be getting ready to talk about this, you got NC State and Tennessee playing in Charlotte. NC State, that's a tough go right there because Western Carolina, my alma mater, hung in there with them for 3 quarters. So, that's got to be a little bit discerning also for NC State.
Well, not just hung in there with them, had them on the ropes in the third quarter. They were up 21-17, and Andy, the Catamounts absolutely afforded themselves. That was a good ball game for them to go on the road to NC State and come out that way.
Yeah, I was shocked. I saw the score a couple of times, and I couldn't believe how close the game it was.
Absolutely. What about the Georgia Clemson game, though? Clemson held, it was like 6-0 for maybe even a halftime. Longest time, it was a close ball game, and then, boy, the wheels fell off for the Tigers.
They sure did, and Georgia looked like they were playing the junior varsity for Clemson because they just dominated that game in the second half.
Well, I know Coach Sweeney has been anti-portal, has not used it, et cetera, but the Clemson faithful not at all happy. And I'm telling you what, Clemson with Appalachian State on, Thursday night this week, it's an early game. They cannot afford a loss to Appalachian, and Appalachian's good enough to give Clemson a hard time on this week, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Western, a different league altogether from NC State, but Appalachian's coming in on equal ground as far as the divisional. Clemson's got to watch it, and I know what Dabo was saying. That we build our program, we build our players. They come in as freshmen, and all of that, and Georgia did too. And but Georgia also went to the portal and brought in some players where they had some weak spots, if there were any weak spots. So they brought in some players out of the portal. It's just going to be a tough game for Clemson, and they've got to be careful because I forget how many quarters it is now since they've scored a touchdown. going all the way back to last season. So going to be a tough day.
I know we got a lot of Clemson fans, and they're not real happy right now. We do have some Miami fans around the area. Miami looked really good. They really put the wood to Florida, and so we'll have to wait and see if Miami's really, really good or if Florida's down this year. But the SEC otherwise, I think, looked pretty stout in the opening weekend. Final couple minutes here, let's talk a little NFL. We've got our first game of the season coming up on Thursday night, Kansas City hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Replay of the AFC Championship game this past year, of course. The Chiefs will get another set of rings. Andy, the Chiefs going for 3 in a row Super Bowls. It's never been done. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs this year?
Well, if anybody can do it, I think the Chiefs can. They're loaded again, and they sure have an eye on getting that number 3 victory in the Super Bowl this season.
They absolutely, in the draft, coach, went out and replaced Tyreek Hill 2 years late, but they replaced him. Of course, they won 2 Super Bowls in the meantime, but they went out and got the kid that can fly, and so that's going to give Patrick Mahomes a little more firepower on offense.
Yeah, and that was what they needed. They needed somebody to stretch the field, and they've got that guy now. As far as them, a three-peat, like you said, it's never been done. The NFL prides itself on parity, but right now, and I think you made this comment last week, until somebody proves that they can beat the Chiefs, they got to be the number 1 team in line to three-peat.
Absolutely. A couple of guys that have been holding out, Andy, are back in and are going to be with their teams to start the season. CeeDee Lamb finally got signed in Dallas. Brandon Ayuk finally got signed in San Francisco. They're still missing their best offensive lineman, though. Trent Williams still hasn't been signed out in San Francisco. But you also got Jamar Chase holding out in Cincinnati. So there's still some unsettled pieces to some of these really high-powered teams, and so that's going to make for an interesting season.
It is. Be interested to see how long these guys hold out.
Absolutely. Carolina Panthers, coach, I mean, you've been on that offensive line. You beat that drum every single episode of Armchair last year. What are your thoughts after that last preseason?
I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait one more week and see how the offensive line does. They did spend some money there. They did try to better the offensive line, but the jury's still out. And the reason I say that, I'm not sure how much of a good look we got at the Panthers because Coach held out the starters so long in the previous preseason games that I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait and see how that offensive line plays.
Well, no doubt about it, the Panthers are there's a lot of interest in the Carolina Panthers locally, and after last year with C.J. Stroud and all the things, now, I mean, all of a sudden, Houston's a Super Bowl contender now. They went out in the offseason, signed Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon to go along with an already pretty potent offense. So you got Houston looking at the Super Bowl in just the second year with their quarterback. Panthers fans are just hoping that, Bryce Young can stay upright for most of the game, as Coach Suttle has pointed out with that offensive line. Hey, that's all the time we have for Armchair Quarterback this week. A reminder, get out and see one of those Cleveland County matchups this Friday night, and we'll see you here next week on Armchair Quarterback.